DC, Nick Saban never ceases to amaze. He's always working behind the scenes. And, of course, he did the typical, you can always expect some big news story to hit right before Memorial Day weekend. And then, of course, they're going down for spring meetings this week as well. But Nick Saban pulling a commitment, a quarterback commitment. Should we as Alabama fans read anything into that in terms of what this means?
Well, I think we should always read into it that Nick Saban is a man of his word. When he stood up and talked about our signing class, he said it wasn't finished yet. And he talked about maybe adding a quarterback. But, Martin, I think there's some other things you can look at. But drop back and look at the big picture. I love to look at just the facts of it. The facts are that this didn't just happen overnight. It wasn't something that just happened by chance. In order for this to work, this had to be in the works, or at least the possibility of this signing had to be in the works for quite a while, because the young man had committed. We're talking about Lane Hatcher. He had committed to Arkansas State as a quarterback, 3-star quarterback coming out of Little Rock, Pulaski Academy there. He had committed to Arkansas State, but he had not signed with them. So this must have been a possibility. He had been talked to by the Alabama staff at least leading up to this. It wasn't overnight. But, Alabama was looking to get another scholarship quarterback, because Nick Saban loves to have 4 scholarship quarterbacks on the team. I think it's important. It helps him ensure against transfer, ensure against injury. And so I think this was in the works all the time. I think they had talked to the young man about walking on. I think he had a scholarship to Arkansas State, and eventually a scholarship becomes available, and then he gets offered and immediately signs, and they flip him from Arkansas State. So I think we look at it, and the fans ought to be just delighted that Nick Saban has been behind the scenes working and all these sort of things, and to make things work out to what he wants and the team that he wants to put the best team on the field. Now, I think also there's a lot of folks talking about how is this going to impact the competition, the quarterback competition. Can we read anything into this? Does Nick Saban know something that we don't know? Well, the answer to that is probably Nick Saban knows a lot that we don't know. He doesn't usually show his hand in what's going on. But I think basically in this is another way for Coach Saban to shore up the quarterback. Having 4 scholarship quarterbacks on the team, you're coming off a spring season where your number 1 or your number 2 quarterback has had an injury to his hand. Tua has hurt his hand. He had surgery. He had a little complication to it and had to go back and have a little bit more. So you don't know how that's going to pan out. You're hoping everything's going to be fine. He's going to come back and have no problems with it. But now he has an injury that he has to be concerned about at least. You have the competition between Jalen and Tua, and the question is whether one of them will, if they lose the competition, will they transfer? Then you have Mac Jones, who's sitting there as a third-string quarterback, has performed very well in the spring game. And as I talked about on the podcast, I wouldn't be surprised that if he considers transferring, like many other Alabama quarterbacks have done, who perform well in the spring contest, and then it's not the starter, or at least the second string coming out into the start of the season.
DC, I wouldn't be doing my job as a media stir pot guy if I didn't dig a little deeper. Which guy do you think is more likely to be on the transfer block? Because, listen, I mean, I look at it as far as this year, I don't know that it impacts this year at all. But the reality of it is, Nick Saban is now poised to have 6 scholarships quarterbacks and a preferred walk-on quarterback. Okay, and right now we had figured out how to play 2 at the same time. So we can say what we want. The reality is somebody's going to be transferring eventually at some point out of this whole conglomerate of 2017, 18, 19 quarterbacks. I just don't see them all staying. Is Mac Jones more likely to be that guy because he's kind of sandwiched between he has 2 guys in front of him and then 2 guys coming in next year? that comes with a whole lot with them. Is he more likely to transfer, or is Jalen more likely to transfer? And, of course, we know this is all just your opinion.
And this is my opinion. This is speculation. Of course, everybody has an opinion, and they're worth whatever anybody wants to pay attention to them. But in my opinion, Martin, I don't think you're stirring the pot here, really, because I think that's a valid question. That's a question on everybody's mind. I think when you start talking about and hone in on just one potential transfer and saying this Jalen's going to transfer, I think that's when everybody starts stirring the pot. So I think that when you look at it and look at the evidence, I'm an evidence guy. I like to look at what the evidence says and kind of give you a well thought out opinion. Well, after looking at this, what I've looked at, you look at Tua. He has a good chance to come in and be the starter this year. After his performance in the national championship game, his brother has already signed to Leah. Has signed with the University of Alabama, so you got a brother coming in. I think it's unlikely that he transfers if he doesn't win the position, starting position. Then you got Jalen Hurd, who's been a great quarterback at Alabama for 2 years. He's done everything he's been asked to do. He is very competitive. Both he and Tua are very competitive. I see them going into this off-season summer and into the fall and competing right up to one of them trots out on the field. And then you got Mac Jones, and you use the word sandwich, and I think that's a good word in this case because he's stuck, I think, on this depth chart. Definitely going to be behind Tua and Jalen if both of them stay. And then you got Talia, and you have Braxton Barker. This year is a preferred walk-on that's coming in. It's highly thought of by the Alabama coaches. You got this other quarterback, Lane Hatcher, that now has been signed. So I think if anybody takes a look at this signing and says, hey, what about me? I think it's going to be Mac Jones. So on my podcast, Gary and I are talking, we state that, it's a good, in our opinion, a better chance that Mac Jones transfers than if Jalen transfers. I just think Jalen is set up, if he doesn't win the starting job, that there's opportunity for Alabama coaching staff because of what he's done for Alabama, because of his competitive spirit, to use him in the offense along with Tua. I think the same thing happens if Tua doesn't win. So there's more opportunities for the road to see them to play at Alabama this coming season and help the team win another championship. And both of them have that competitive fire. Mac Jones did a great job in the spring game, and many quarterbacks have launched out into the transfer world after doing good and having great spring statistics to Alabama that show that they've transferred out because of that. But in all likelihood, if whoever transfers out, or if someone transfers out, it's going to be a well-thought-out decision. Because, Martin, if you look in the past, those quarterbacks that transferred from Alabama hasn't really had a great path to success when they leave Alabama.
That's so true with yet another this year, Blake Barnett heading on. This is just a yes-no question because I want to get to those the young wide receivers. Do you think there's any possibility that if Jalen doesn't win the job, that he's asked his coaching staff to redshirt him so that he can leave with 2 years of eligibility, and Nick Saban is potentially even bringing in, even if that's the case?
I think that's a possibility. I mentioned one of your shows earlier. I think that's a possibility.
All right. DC, with the Capstone report talking about the quarterback situation, the transfer, the new commitment, its impact on the competition. Speaking of competition, very seldom do you have as many young players at one position, but with what I say is a wealth of experience in terms of the Alabama wide receivers. But there's two young players that don't have that game time experience that's going to try to break into the wide receiver rotation. That's Terrell Shavers and Kadarius Townsend. What's your thoughts, comments on those two guys?
Oh yeah, I think it's another great opportunity to look at the positions at Alabama, the wide receiver positions this year coming in. People talk about the three that played as freshmen. They did a great job. Devonta Smith, Henry Ruggs III, and Jerry Jeudy. All three of them did a great job, and like you said, have a wealth of experience coming back. What we failed to talk about is we got three great wide receivers that started the season that left the team that they've been opening for others to come in and get some playing time. And I think two of those are, as you just mentioned, is Terrell Shavers and Kadarius Townsend. I think each one of those young men brings something different to the table, and they have really a spot to play a role with Alabama and make a good career. In Kadarius Townsend, you get a young man his size, around 6 foot, 6'1". He showed his speed, tremendous speed in the spring game. I was there. You can can test a 40 all day long, and you can run in shorts all day long and see how fast you are. But man, when you take that slant coming across the middle like he did, and turn on the afterburners wearing all that equipment and outrace everybody at the end zone, you show just what kind of football speed you have on the playing field. So he did a great job there. I think that would fill a good role with the slot receiver. I think if he catch those passes, I think he'll also play some time in special teams, maybe as a punt returner or kickoff returner with that speed. I think he has an opportunity to compete for that position as well. So I'm high on Darius Townsend. I look forward to him seeing him play next year. Terrell Shavers, now he hasn't had a chance to play yet, and leading up to the spring, some of the guys that I was talking to were talking about how impressive he was in those spring practices before he was injured. He had a little minor injury that had to be taken care of with a procedure, but every word I'm hearing, all the talk coming out of the camp is that he's going to be fine going into the competing for the summer. And then Terrell Shavers, you get what Nick Saban has wanted for quite a while. I think several times we've heard Nick Saban talk about after games that we didn't compete for the 50-50 balls. And Terrell Shavers is a long receiver. He has long arms. He's very tall. He's listed as 6'6". Some people say he could be as tall as 6'7", 6'7.5". He plays much taller than that. And he goes up and goes for those 50-50 balls. So I think he's going to have an opportunity to compete, make some big plays for Alabama down in this season, and maybe get a roll in there. It's going up for some of those 50-50 balls. You know, Martin, I'm kind of telling my age on the podcast. I likened him to the old school wide receiver from the Philadelphia Eagles that some of our older listeners might know. Harold Carmichael, that's right. He has a game kind of like Harold Carmichael. Harold Carmichael was fast, but everybody talked about how long and tall he was. Yeah. And Shavers fits that mold, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Hey, one other question for you, DC, in regards to the wide receiver position. This is really more about the freshmen coming in. Have you had a chance to look at what potentially Waddle from Texas is going to bring to the mix and shake up the wide receiver core a little bit?
Yeah, some of the things I've looked at on him, it really looks like he has a chance to come in and compete again as a freshman. As you know, Nick Saban has always said he's going to play the best players, and no matter where they are on the field last year, you saw so many freshmen at the end of the game, that championship game, competing and for us and giving us a great opportunity to win that game. I look for him to come in, especially early on in special teams, and contribute. But he is fast. He can catch the ball. Great route runner. He has a great football presence on the field. And so, I look for him to come in and do a really good job of competing. I think another thing that gives all these wide receivers a better opportunity this year is Josh Gattis. I think he is a great coach, wide receivers coach. Just listening to some of the people talk about him and his attention to detail and the techniques that he teaches. I think Alabama's wide receiver core is going to be just an uptick this year in performance based just on his coaching alone. But I think Waddell has the opportunity to come in and start, not start, but at least compete for a starting position on Alabama. If he's the best player, of course, Nick Saban said he'll play. I think he has a good opportunity to do that.
Well, that's DC, the Capstone Report presented by Golden Shores Production. And talking about that Josh Gattis, I don't know if you got to watch Penn State any this year or not, but Josh Gattis got their backup quarterback to a point where he could actually play a few reps at wide receiver. So is that even a possibility that Jalen Hurd gets a few reps at wide receiver? Because I know that DC said at the beginning, and I tend to concur, if both of these guys are on campus, on this team, on this roster, and no one's asked for a red shirt, then you'll see both of those guys playing some quarterbacking on the field at the same time.